Well, not such great news for the New York Mets today as we find out that our ace at the top of the rotation, Sean Manaea, has been shut down for 2 weeks after experiencing discomfort in the oblique that delayed his start to the season. What's up, guys? Tony Metro here. I was planning on doing a live stream to preview Game 2 of the Mets and Marlins series, coming off that nice 10-4 victory yesterday where they got back to 500. Looking to move over it today, but instead we get this bad news instead, which is very unfortunate. Sean Manaea shut down for 2 weeks after experiencing discomfort in the oblique, which is the whole reason he's not even in the starting rotation right now, is he's still trying to ramp up. And that was a bit of bad news to get on this Tuesday afternoon, that is. Reports coming from Mike Puma, I think he initially had it, that said he felt the discomfort and that he was going to be shut down for an additional 2 weeks, which is probably now going to mean that Sean Manaea is likely not going to be back on the Mets starting rotation if everything goes perfectly until closer to the end of May. So we knew that this injury was something that he experienced at the beginning of spring training, and we were told that it would probably be 2, maybe 3 turns through the rotation before he was able to get back. It seemed like everything was going well. We had just heard as of last Friday that reports were good. That was from Apple TV, actually, where they said that both Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea were healthy and looking good as far as their rehab process. And now, out of nowhere, Sean Manaea experiencing this discomfort in that oblique. So I have this report up here, right here from SMY. He'll be shut down, like I said, for 2 weeks. He said that he experienced it a couple days ago. According to Carlos Mendoza, they took an MRI of it again and it showed inflammation. So he actually got a PRP injection, and so he's not going to throw for 2 weeks now. So obviously, this is not what Mets fans wanted to hear. You know, we already know that going into this season that the starting rotation is not exactly the strong suit of this group, but pretty good results so far 4 games in as far as the starters have gone. We got a decent start out of Clay Holmes opening day, and then really good starts from Tyler McGill and from Griffin Canning in Houston. And then last night, David Peterson did his usual Bulldog way, getting out of some tough spots and ended up delivering a solid 6-inning start for the team. But this is all with the hope that, hey, we only have to last for a couple of weeks before Sean Manaea comes back. Now it's looking like he'll probably miss the first 2 months of the season. So let's look a little more at this SMY article here. It looks like Brandon Sproat and Blake Tidwell, who are still options down in AAA. Of course, we know that. We got Frankie Montas, who's probably not returning until late May or early June. We already knew that, so really no new reporting there. The only news here is, again, that the Mets are going to be without who we believed was going to be their ace of the rotation for this season, especially after Sean Manaea changed that arm slot angle last year. He was just so filthy good and so great for the Mets down the stretch and in the playoffs. Right here on the screen, we have Game 3 of the Mets and Phillies series from the National League Divisional round, and he was a bulldog for us. I mean, he was so tremendous. I felt so much confidence with Manaea on the mound. Last year, 12-6 with a 3.47 ERA, a whip of 1.08. He was just absolutely tremendous. I'm going to pull up right over here on this little bottom screen. You can see his baseball reference page, so we can get all of his full numbers here. If I could get this Geico ad out of the way, that would be awesome, right? Who's this stupid Geico gecko? They still, sometimes you just can't win, right? Anyway, 3 WAR. Good for a 3 WAR last year with the Mets. Went 12-6, like I said, that 3.47 ERA in 32 starts. Obviously, he's not even going to come close to 32 starts at this point now. We were hoping just to probably get 26 or 25 out of him, given the injury that he suffered in spring training. But now it's looking more like he's going to miss at least the first 2 months of the season, and he may only make 21 or 22 starts this year. And that's if everything holds up, if his new timeline is accurate, and if he's able to stay healthy then for the rest of the year when he does finally debut in the big leagues. But we're talking about a ramp-up period here where he's just got to start throwing again from 90 feet. I mean, that's just the beginning of getting back as a starting pitcher. Then from there, you might start throwing at long ball or whatever they call it these days, and then you have to get on the mound, start throwing bullpens, start getting into that whole shape, and then finally you can start thinking about simulated games, and then hopefully you can get into some rehab games. This is at least going to take him out until, I would say, if the Mets are being extra cautious about it, I wouldn't expect to see Sean Manaea debuting for the big league club until the first week of June. Let me check here on the live chat, see if we got anything going on. Guys, be sure to leave some questions, some comments. I want to get some interaction here with you guys. I'd love to chat with you all. We're missing a few of the elements on the background here, but you can download this QR code right here. It's going to be on these cards that I'm printed out, and I'm going to be putting all around New York City. You'll be seeing these on the 7 line. You'll be seeing these all over Manhattan and Queens, and you could just download this. It'll take you to my YouTube channel. It'll take you to my TikTok, Instagram, social media pages all over the place. So be sure to download that QR code right there if you want the latest Mets news, rumors, and to be sure to get all the updates on my live streams like this one right here. I got the news when I was just getting back from lunch after going to the gym this afternoon, and I saw that Mike Puma had reported that Sean Manaea is going to be out after this setback to his oblique. So obviously not so great. Let's just talk about the rotation for right now. We got some pretty good starts this first turn through so far, and that's without even seeing Kodai Senga. So you got to be happy about that. Clay Holmes didn't have his best stuff in Houston, but I thought he looked pretty solid despite the walks. The only thing he needed to correct were the fastballs up in the zone that the Astros were teeing off on, and then his sinker, which is typically his bread and butter pitch, just wasn't there for him that day. So overall, not terrible numbers, 2 earned runs and 4 2/3. I'll sign up for that almost any day with Clay Holmes. Then we went to Tylor Megill, who was really fantastic in the Mets' lone win in Houston. I believe he went 5 innings plus and gave up just 1 run. The Mets ended up winning that one 3-1, and he probably could have went longer and completed that 6th inning if not for the drop third strike from Luis Torrens behind the plate and then a seeing eye single from Jose Altuve. Luckily, the bullpen able to clean it up for him, and he does get the victory in that one. And then we got the fantastic showing from Griffin Canning. Obviously gives up the eventual game-winning RBI double to Yordan Alvarez, but before that, he was fantastic. That slider was almost untouchable. In fact, he struck Yordan Alvarez on that slider twice before that game-winning double. In fact, threw it 54% of the time. So I'm just saying maybe another Mets pitching lab merchant right there. I'm liking what I'm seeing out of him so far here between spring training and his debut start. And then yesterday, David Peterson, a little bit of a rocky first inning, giving up the opposite field home run to Lopez. 2 walks to begin the 2nd inning, a walk to begin the 3rd and the 4th as well, but he really dug himself out of some of those holes. Not a great Marlins lineup, obviously, but the overall performance from this starting rotation 4 games in has told me that if the Mets offense does what it should do, like they did yesterday, they should win a lot of games with that type of starting pitching, especially when the bullpen has been as effective as it has so far. Just finally yesterday, when Danny Young had his little meltdown with 2 outs in the 9th inning, the first runs scored against the Mets bullpen so far 4 games into the season. Now, I know it's a small sample size on all fronts, but I do expect the Mets offense to score anywhere between 4 and 5 runs a game, and I do expect this Mets bullpen to continue to be really good. They're not going to be scoreless every single night like we've seen for the most part so far, but if the Mets starting pitching can just give them 5 or 6 solid innings of 2 to 3 run ball like we've gotten so far, they should win a lot of ball games. And that's all without even seeing Kodai Senga so far, who's going to pitch tonight. So obviously the Mets need to be very concerned about Sean Manaea's injury, and I think they are going to handle him with kid gloves. They do not want anything to get worse with Manaea, and I think that's why he got this PRP injection and why he's being shut down for the next 2 weeks. Jonathan Chanook, what's up, my man? How's it going? Thanks for hopping into the chat. Be sure to leave any questions, comments, and happy to take as many of them as I can. But I do think the Mets are going to be ultra cautious with Manaea. There's no fail-safe plan for David Stearns as far as the depth of this starting rotation. There are some depth guys, the Frankie Monteses, but we already dipped into it to replace him with Tylor Megill and Griffin Canning and Paul Blackburn, who, by the way, is also hurt right now and trying to get back from injury. The 2 young studs down in AAA right now are potential options, but not right now. And that's Brandon Sproat and Blade Tidwell. I think those guys are going to definitely need a little more seasoning and time down in AAA before David Stearns is ready to call them up. I wouldn't expect them to get the call until at least June, something like that. So we'll just see how that goes. But Mets are definitely going in, dipping into their starting pitching depth pretty early on. So this is not the news we wanted to get as far as Sean Manaea. Jonathan, Tony, your thoughts on the New York Daily News back cover torpedo? I thought it was funny. I mean, a lot of Yankee fans, we know how sensitive they are these days, ever since losing Juan Soto and losing that World Series in embarrassing fashion. A lot of Yankee fans thought it was a slight toward them. I mean, it's just the topic of Major League Baseball right now, the torpedo bats. I mean, it's a perfect play on words, right? So, he wasn't using a torpedo bat, and you saw it said that it was a raw Pete Power as opposed to using a torpedo bat. So, I thought it was pretty funny. Well done by the New York Daily News there. Speaking of the torpedo bats, I guess Francisco Lindor has used them in the past, and maybe even as recently as the series in Houston. I'm not sure if he did, but definitely a photo of him using them from last year as well. Look, I mean, Major League Baseball would not just allow these bats to be used without getting approval first. I mean, if you played Little League, that umpires come up and they take a look at your bats. And if they're doing it at that level, they're doing it at the Major League level as well. So it's not like the Yankees are cheating. I think that's totally bogus. We've also seen tons of pictures of players from other teams around the league using these types of bats. So obviously there had to be some type of approval or something ran by Major League Baseball, or otherwise there's no way this would be allowed. So I would not call the Yankees out on cheating for torpedo bats. I would just say they played a really crappy Brewers team. And I've always had this opinion: Midwest teams cannot play at Yankee Stadium. I mean, they bow down to the Yankees pinstripes. It is so ridiculous. I don't understand it, but take any team from the AL or NL Central and put your life savings on them to lose when they go to Yankee Stadium. I don't know. Look, this is a Mets stream, so let me get back to this. Sean Manaea, of course, setback for 2 weeks, so a little frustrating for sure, but David Stearns is hoping that he does have the pitching depth, and so that is the reason why they signed a guy like Griffin Canning and kept Tylor Megill and brought in Paul Blackburn and last year, knowing that he would have an extra year of control here this season. So, there's a certain point where you have to be a little concerned because we do have expectations for Manaea to be our ace, but they've held the fort so far. I'm a little distracted here if you can't tell because I'm trying to put this stream out on Twitter so everybody else can get in on this, but let me just write this up. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know. Like I said, I'm going to be going to opening day. It will be my first opening day at Citi Field. I am super excited. I've never done it before. I don't know if you guys have before. I'm expecting massive lines. I guess the gates at Citi Field only open an hour and a half before game time now or something like that. I used to, when I was a kid, go and it was like 2.5 or 3 hours before game time. My parents would go crazy because I'd get out of school and I'd be like at 3:30. All right, we heading to the stadium now? Like, come on, let's go. It's time to go. But I guess it's an hour and a half before. So hopping on the 7 line from the city, from Manhattan, and I'm going to be heading into Queens to go to there. And I'll be handing out a lot of these, and you could probably find them on your local Subway, your coffee shop. They'll be all over the place. And you can also scan that QR right here, and that'll keep you up to date on all my new content on all my different platforms: YouTube, X, Twitter, whatever they call it nowadays, TikTok and Instagram. If you're 10 years old, I don't use that, but apparently the kids do, so you could do all that. But let's blast this out to Twitter real quick. And if you have any friends or family that are Mets fans, be sure to tell them to subscribe to the channel and to subscribe to my other social medias. And I want to just keep this going and keep getting more and more Mets fans in here, keep having good discussions like I've had so far over the last couple of weeks. Really appreciate everyone hopping in. Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing to see Manaea go down like this. He was such a warrior for the team last year. I mean, you see him in this start right here, Game 3 of the NLDS versus the Phillies, and he just absolutely shoved for them. They were down in that game in the beginning, and then obviously they were able to come back and win that one before clinching in Game 4. And the expectation with this new arm slot from Sean Manaea was, hey, he's going to have a full season from that arm slot, a full season being comfortable with the Mets in their pitching lab, and this is going to be awesome. awesome. He's going to be the ace of this group. And now it's looking like we're going to miss out on him for the first 2 months. So what do you guys think? Tell me in the comment section below. How would you organize the rest of the rotation now for this next month or two while Manaea gets back from injury? Personally, I think they have it perfect the way it is right now. You know, they're still treating Kodai Senga very cautiously. We know that tonight he's going to be on a pitch limit. He's not going to be going more than 75 pitches. He didn't get a ton of work in during spring training, really didn't throw that ghost fork pitch at all. And so he's going to start at about 75 pitches his first few starts through the rotation here before they ramp him up to the traditional 95 to 100 that a starting pitcher would usually throw in starts. So the Mets rotation is definitely, you know, very, very delicate right now, especially with Montas out. Now Manaea setback. Paul Blackburn is hurt. They really cannot afford any of their current 5 starters to get hurt or have any bad performances moving forward to the point that they need to replace them. So let me know, how would you guys order the rotation right now? Would you keep it the way it is? Holmes, McGill, Canning, Peterson, and then Senga? Or do you want to bump Senga up to the top spot? You know, it's really a matchup kind of thing. You got off days that will always change these things. Obviously, they want to get Senga as much rest as they possibly can. And, you know, he's still not totally used to pitching in a 5-man rotation. I think the best thing that the Mets can do if Manaea ultimately comes back is to go to a 6-man rotation. So that would include the current 5 guys they have and then just adding Sean Manaea to it. You know, the ultimate question about that is, how healthy and how well is everybody performing? Do you have enough quality arms to go to a 6-man rotation? The early returns are an absolute yes, based on what we've seen the first starts from these 4 guys to begin the season. But is that going to be the same answer come May when Manaea is finally ready to return? You know, I really was impressed with Canning and really, really impressed with Tyler McGill, but was that just an opening day start? You know, first start of the season where they had some good fortune, pitched pretty well. Bats are still catching up to, you know, pitchers. That's typically how it goes. Bats are a little bit behind the pitchers at the beginning of the season in spring training. So I don't know. We'll see about that. But let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. If you want to see a change in the rotation, if you think it's good. Yeah, Timothy Frith, I know. Sean Manaea out 2 more weeks. Definitely a blow to the Mets starting rotation, no doubt about it. But, you know, fortunately, we've been lucky to have a pretty solid performance so far from each of their starters to begin this year. And we're just going to blast this out right quick on Twitter. Manaea is such a weird name to spell sometimes, I swear. Talking about Sean Manaea's setback. Come join the stream. All right. Let me put that away. Let's go back. Let's take a look at what Mike Puma had to say about this. He was the one that I believe broke this news. Puma, of course, of the New York Mets, or of the New York Post, rather. Setback in his rehab, he is shut down for at least 2 weeks. We probably won't see him until late May in a best case. Yeah, I mean, look, when the initial injury happened, we were thinking it was probably going to be the beginning of May. So it would make sense that if it was another 2 weeks of no throwing like they've prescribed, then it's probably, going to be toward the end of May. And again, like Puma says, best case scenario, he's going to come back at that time. There's no guarantee about that at all. The PRP injection is really concerning to me, what Carlos Mendoza had to say. I believe that's like the plate plasma blood spinning thing. I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm not a doctor. That's why I'm doing live streams on YouTube. But I'm pretty sure that's what that is. And it's usually less invasive, less painful than like a cortisone shot. Cortisone shots will just kind of get you good for like a week or 2, or probably even less, maybe just a game or 2. And then you got to go get it again. It's just like a big bruise. But PRP injections are a little bit different. I think they're a little more of a long-term type of solution, which makes sense then why he wouldn't be throwing for the next 2 weeks. And as a, baseball, every sport, you need your obliques, but especially if you're pitching, obviously you're going to need that. So Manaea was initially shut down in February. Late February, he had the oblique strain. He began throwing the week of March 10th for his initial rehab and was doing a full spring training style progression. This is all from Anthony DiComo now, and that takes the better part of 6 weeks. He'll have to begin the progression again after he resumes throwing following the latest shutdown. So 2 weeks from now, that would be, let's just call it April 15th. And then he needs 6 more weeks from there to go through that full spring rehab. And I guess that includes getting on the mound, throwing a bullpen, a simulated game, and then some rehab starts. My imagination would be he's got to take at least 2 rehab starts. So, yeah, I mean, best case scenario, we're talking end of May, which means he'll have missed the first full 2 months of the 2025 season. So, definitely frustrating to lose Manaea in this fashion. Let's see what else. Who else we got on the beat over there? Let's see what our good old friend Andy Martino has to have. I'm sure this will be great. You just know Andy Martino is just feverishly typing it away, smiling. He's the worst. The weasel. Nope, just talking about the Yankees in his book. Typical Martino. Hey, can you believe I'm not blocked? How about that? I guess I haven't done enough to irritate him. Happy to see that, I guess. Yeah, so I mean, really, there's nothing the Mets can do at this point. You know, Paul Blackburn is hurt. There's really no other starting pitchers on the free agent market at this point that would be of interest. You know, at this point, you would probably say if you're going to sign anyone, it would be one of those journeyman kind of starting pitchers just to put in AAA as a little extra backup option, a little more depth, seeing as though the Mets have already had to dip into their depth at this point. But really, there's no big acquisition you go out there and make. And I don't think, even if there was that, the Mets would do that, because as it stands right now, they have a fully intact 5-man rotation. And like I've said on this stream, so far so good. The rotation's been really, really solid to this point. You just have to hope that this isn't a more serious long-term injury that could have basically affect him throughout the entire season and his performance, or make him miss more time down the line in 2025. As you guys hear, my boy Mookie Wilson over here. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens, I guess. But hopefully it is just 2 weeks of a setback. If that's the case, I do think that the Mets can survive this right now. You know, you just can't afford to have any other injuries to the rotation as it stands right this second. You know, you can't have David Peterson go down with something, or even Clay Holmes, or any of the guys in this current 5-man rotation cannot go down. And like I said, it's extremely delicate with Kodai Senga, obviously on this little pitch limit. You know, it's pretty frustrating that this is now his 3rd year with the Mets in Major League Baseball. Obviously, he had a long career in Japan before this, where he was accustomed to pitching in 6-man rotations. But the fact that he's still not used to pitching in a 5-man rotation, it just kind of feels very DeGrom-like, when the Mets had to make sure everything was perfect on any given day for Jacob deGrom to go out and pitch. I mean, obviously not the case in the beginning of his career, but when all those injuries started to mount for Jacob deGrom, that's how it felt. You know, the weather's not right and this and that. And, you know, that's kind of how it's feeling with Kodai Senga. And, you know, there's got to come a point where it's like you either let him rip or you let him fall. But, you know, to this point, we haven't really seen a lot of Senga. He barely pitched last year. And when he did in the playoffs, it wasn't all that great. Jonathan Chanub, yo, Tony, what's named among suitors for Alcantara? Does the Mets start a verbal fight today if the Marlins keep Sandy on the mound? You know what, man? I don't think there'll be any verbal or physical fights regarding that, but I said it in my post-game stream last night when I was previewing today's matchup of Sandy Alcantara versus Kodai Senga. You know, every time Alcantara goes out there against a playoff-worthy opponent this year, he's doing an audition for that team. You know, the Marlins are probably going to lose 100 games again this year. I mean, you saw that lineup they rolled out last night. I only knew one of those names. I mean, it was brutal. They didn't spend any money in this offseason. They are going to have a long 2025. So, yeah, I mean, I would expect Alcantara to get traded. I remember back in 2022 when they were throwing him all these complete games in what was a totally lost year for the Marlins, tweeting about it, saying the Marlins are really going to make Sandy Alcantara have to get Tommy John surgery just so he can pitch 9 innings in a lost season. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, he got Tommy John, missed 24, and now he's back. So I don't know who Sandy Alcantara is anymore after that injury. I think it's going to probably be a little too rich for the Mets' taste, if I'm being honest. That doesn't seem like the David Stearns type of move to trade for a guy that's 29, coming off Tommy John surgery. I don't know how much time he has left as far as team control. Let's take a look at it, though. I know this box over here is really small for you down here on the bottom. But let's take a look here. I could actually just do this. How's that, folks? Sandy Alcantara last year. What did he do? Didn't pitch at all in 24 and 23. He really had a rough year there. You can see 4.14 ERA in 28 starts, and then ends up getting Tommy John in 2024. He was worth an 8 WAR in 2022, that Cy Young year. 228 innings. I mean, leave it to the Marlins to have this amazing starting pitcher run him into the ground in a totally lost season at the age of 26 years old. What just morons down in Miami. He made one start this year against Pittsburgh on opening day. 4.2 thirds innings for a 3.86 ERA, gave up 2 earned runs, walked 4 guys, but also struck out 7. So hopefully the Mets will be able to lay off any junk from him today. I don't know. We'll see about that. But yeah, I mean, hey, I would love if the Mets would get Sandy Alcantara, but I think it's going to be too rich for David Stearns' blood. He's likes to shop on the bargain, the flea market. And I got to give him credit. He's usually right about it. I mean, early returns so far on Griffin Canning is looking great. Last year, Sean Manaea, the guy that we're making this stream about because we're so frustrated and it's such big news that he's out, was a guy off the bargain bin last year, the discount rack. And now he's turned into essentially the best starting pitcher on the Mets in the Mets rotation. So, I just think David Stearns will probably make some kind of coy moves to improve the rotation, improve the lineup. I think it'll be better than the Daniel Vogelback deadlines of years past. But yeah, Sandy Alcantara might be a little too expensive. What would you trade if you're the Mets and you were the general manager to try to get Sandy Alcantara? Because for me, they're probably starting by asking for a guy like Jet Williams, which is ridiculous. I wouldn't do that. That's a non-starter for me, a guy like Williams. Now, if you're talking about a guy like Luis Angel Acuna, who you guys know I love, that's a different story. Even as much as I love Luis Angel Acuna, I'd have to do that. So Alcantara signed a contract extension through 2026. So this was back in 22. And it must have been right before his Cy Young year. It was a 5-year deal for $56 million. So running from 2022 to 2026 and a 2027 team option. Okay. So Alcantara is signed through 2026 and then as a team option for 2027. The Marlins are going to be asking for an absolute boatload to get Alcantara. I mean, it's going to depend on how he performs and how he looks this year coming off the Tommy John. But if he's even close to resembling what he did in that 2022 Cy Young season, he's going to command a huge haul for the Marlins, who will probably muff it like they always do. But could happen fast. Last year they traded Luis Arias pretty early in the season. I mean, granted, Miami started the season 0-9, so that was not good. But, I was really, really surprised to see them trade Arias that fast. I think they'll probably wait longer on Sandy Alcantara. Starting pitching's different, and it's usually more expensive for other teams to acquire than a position player. So I would think the Marlins would probably be smart to wait it out a couple more months closer to the deadline before entertaining any trades for Sandy Alcantara. Raul Almanzar. Welcome to the chat. Appreciate it, man. Let's go Mets. World Champs 2025. Hey, man, I hope so. That first series in Houston, the bats were definitely a little concerning, but obviously just the first 3 games of the season. I also don't expect them to hit 4 home runs and score 10 runs every game like they did last night. But somewhere in that happy medium middle of that area, 5 runs a game, 4 or 5 runs a game, I do expect them to be doing that. Like I said, guys, be sure to download this QR code. I think it's on this side, maybe this side. And you can get all my latest social media stuff, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok if you are 10 years old, and of course on Twitter and X. I'll be handing these out around Citi Field on opening day and also all over the subways and all over the 5 boroughs. So be sure to scan that QR code. Easy way to find me and what I'm doing. I was planning on doing a pregame preview for the team here, or for the game, for game 2 here against the Marlins, but obviously we had to change course here a little bit. So let me just take this off here, and then we can get into that. What do you guys think? Are you concerned about the injury to Manaea? I personally am not super worried, but I definitely think we're going to need some heavy lifting from the current guys in the rotation. Getting up to speed here on game 2 of the series. Of course, we've talked a little bit about it. Kodai Senga versus Sandy Alcantara. So Senga has actually thrown the most innings in his career against the Marlins. He's had 4 starts for 22 1/3 innings pitched. He has a 2.42 ERA in that time against the Marlins, and actually pitches particularly well at Lone Depot Park. 2 starts there, including his very first MLB start back in 2023. He has a 2.20 ERA against the Marlins. So hopefully we'll get some more of that here this evening. Like I said, that pitch count, just 75 pitches here to begin the year, at least the first few times through the rotation. So not sure how much he's going to, how deep he'll go into this game. That's obviously going to depend on, how his walks are looking, and then on how often he's going into deep counts in this game. But hoping to see a good start now from Kodai Senga, of course, with the news about Manaea. And then Sandy Alcantara, of course, like I said, coming back from Tommy John surgery, first start this year against Pittsburgh on opening day. In his career, a lot of experience against the Mets. 15 career starts against the Orange and Blue. Over that time, has a 3.07 ERA, and his most recent starts came in 2023. Is he still working out the kinks? Is he on any type of pitch limit? And then, like we were talking about before, is this a potential audition for the Mets to take a look at him come the trade deadline if the Mets are going to need some starting pitching, which after the news today about Manaea just became a little more likely. The question is, are the Mets going to be willing to shell out that kind of return in terms of prospects to get a guy of Sandy Alcantara's caliber? Also, is Sandy Alcantara going to be the Sandy Alcantara of old as far as coming back from this Tommy John surgery? That's going to be a big question that not only the Marlins need to figure out, but interested suitors will have to do as well. So Sproat Tidwell to the majors by June, according to Raul Almanzar. Yeah, I think there's a good chance at least one of them comes up. I mean, the word on Tidwell is that he still has a little more refinement to do. I don't think he's as polished as Brandon Sproat is. We know Sproat is clearly the top prospect in the Mets system and top starting pitching prospect for sure. He's also one of the top right-handed pitching prospects in all of baseball. He looked pretty impressive in spring training in his 2 starts. He really struggled in AAA last year in Syracuse. Long balls really hurt him. He said he got away from what he was doing down in single A and in double A. But the Mets were happy with some of the adjustments that he made and that he even showed at the end of last year and then in spring training this year. And they also said that, hey, they intentionally pushed him to AAA because they wanted to see him, not necessarily wanted to see him struggle, but see how he would adapt to better caliber of play. And that's kind of their whole philosophy with the entire minor league system. They did that with Luis Angel Acuna as well. We've heard about Acuna. He gets bored in spring training, but he gets up for the big lights moments. He probably might have been a little overwhelmed at AAA as well. And now he's turned out pretty decent so far here at the big league level. So it'll be interesting to see how the Mets handle this whole situation with Manaea and the rest of the rotation, and whether Sproat or Tidwell will get a call-up and an opportunity here in the summertime. I would guess sometime by June. You're probably right about that, Raul. I actually made in my preseason predictions for Rookie of the Year that it will be Brandon Sproat, and that sometime in the summer, my guess was the end of June, that Sproat will come up. He will take a spot for someone in this rotation, whether it be because of injury or underperformance, and he will keep that rotation spot throughout the end of 2025. So, I mean, lots of exciting things to get ready for here for the Mets. Guys, be sure to leave some questions and some chatter here. We're missing a few of the elements on our stream over here. We're going to get those back up later for our post game. We're going to do a post game after the Mets and Marlins tonight. The team looking to go over 500 for the first time on the season in 2025. Kodai Senga taking on Sandy Alcantara, but obviously the news in this one is about Senga, or rather Sean Manaea, being shut down for 2 weeks according to Mike Puma. So obviously not great news for the Mets. You know, the question's just going to be about how the rest of these guys that are in the rotation right now hold up. And like I said, so far so good. Let's take a look at the Mets starters ERA through these first few games. It's been a really pleasant beginning for everybody. So David Peterson went 6 innings, gave up 5 hits and 2 runs on 3 walks yesterday against the Marlins. He ended up getting the win. Tyler McGill was fantastic. He went 5 innings plus, giving up 3 hits and just 1 walk and 1 run in that game against Houston, the lone victory there in Houston. Griffin Canning was, wow. I mean, I could rave and go on and on about how good Griffin Canning looked in that start against the Astros. Not sure if people are aware, Canning had a huge bugaboo in that lineup, and that was Jordan Alvarez, who had a 1,700 career OPS against him, including 2 home runs. And then the guy right behind him, Christian Walker, same thing. And he totally shut them down the first 2 times through the order. It wasn't until, of course, Jordan Alvarez had the eventual game-winning double off of Canning with 2 outs in the 6th inning there of that one. But otherwise, a great start for him. And then Clay Holmes, you know, it was an up-and-down kind of start. The 4 walks are really what killed him, but I thought his stuff looked pretty nasty. The breaking ball looked really good. The fastball had high velo. He just wasn't locating it very well, so the free passes are what really killed him and shortened that outing. He actually had the shortest outing of this entire group. 4 2/3, whereas Canning went 5 2/3, McGill went 5 innings, and David Peterson went 6 last night in Miami. So really good start so far for the Mets starting pitcher. So happy to see that. But what do you guys think? I mean, is there any addition out there? You know, I just saw today that I believe Lance Lynn just announced his retirement today on his wife's podcast. I mean, I'm just saying, a little bit of AAA depth. Mets could get Lance Lynn out of retirement. Oh my God, that would be a Brody Van Wagenen move. Rick Porcello and Michael Wacha. NL East, come and get us. Oh my gosh, we are so past those days. Thank goodness. Jeez, Michael Wacha and Rick Porcello. Michael Wacha was pretty solid last year, though, for the Royals. I'm pretty sure he was pretty solid, I gotta say, but definitely was not in 2020 for the Mets. That was a weird year. We know that one doesn't count. Starters ERA as far as the National League so far. Let's see. If you guys didn't catch it, I said it in one of my other videos for my Mets preseason predictions for 2025, and I also cut it up into a short. I really do believe David Peterson is going to step up and become the ace of this rotation. And I have a very lofty prediction for him. I believe David Peterson will have a top 10 ERA for National League starters by the end of 2025. You can bookmark that. You can clip this right here. I told you first. I really think that David Peterson is going to have an awesome season for the Mets. So far, so good. 6 innings, 2 runs yesterday. Not bad. 2 solo shots. The walks were a little bit of an issue. We got to work on that. But otherwise, it was a pretty solid start. All right, let's pick it up here. Mets 2025. Take a look at those numbers in totality now. Should have it right here real easy. Then we're going to take a look at the Mets 40-man roster. See if there are any arms. Obviously, we know Paul Blackburn is still down right now. I'm just thinking of terms of pitching depth for this rotation in the case, worst case scenario that Sean Manaea is not ready to come back anytime soon. If he has another setback, I mean, that would be terrible, obviously. But, Blackburn really is not someone you can count on at this point. He went down last year with injury to end the year and then came out, made a couple spring training starts, didn't look very good in Grapefruit League action, and now he began this season on the disabled list or injured list, whatever they call it now. So, I mean, we're basically looking at depth of Blackburn, and then you got to go right next to the two big prospects, and that's Brandon Sproat and Blade Tidwell. And I just don't think that David Stearns is going to call those guys up before they're ready, even in the case of a knee. It was a right knee inflammation injury for Blackburn, so totally unrelated to the back injury that he suffered last year. So, there's really no timetable on him. They say the could return before the end of April for Paul Blackburn, according to Anthony DiComo. This was written 5 days ago, so we'll see about that. But, yeah, otherwise, you look at the 40-man roster, there's not a whole lot of starting pitchers on there that might be serviceable to throw in there in case we need them, because we've already dipped into the rotation depth pretty early on. Jose Butto is an option, but I would not touch that because I think Butto's a tremendous reliever, and I think he's only going to get better. So, I mean, I wouldn't mess with that at all. Don't want to make one problem by trying to solve another. I think that would be a big mistake. But, as of right now, we do have 5 solid starting pitchers at the moment. So we're fortunate in that regard. And so far, the returns have been good. So, just got to hope for more health. Keep your fingers crossed and see how things go. We're going to end this here now, guys. I was glad I was able to get on here and bring the breaking news of Sean Manaea's shutdown. Obviously, 2 weeks. And now we're looking probably not until the end of May for a return for the Mets southpaw. So hopefully it will be around that timetable and there's no further setbacks. Mets are taking on the Marlins, Kodai Senga against Sandy Alcantara tonight at 6:40 p.m. We're going to do a post-game show about that right here on my channel, Tony Metro. So be sure to subscribe, leave a like on this. You can scan that QR code right over there. That'll tell you when I'm going live and when all my new content comes out, and you'll be able to just kind of stay in touch with everything here and be a part of the conversation. So thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. Let's get another W tonight. Move over 500 for the first time on the season. Let's go Mets.